Right, hey guys, how we doing? Back another video from Mother's Basement. Today we're checking out overhyped anime, and we're just going to get right into it.
Overhyped and overrated are words that get thrown around a lot in the anime community,
Yes, very
almost
much
as much
true.
as mid. But
Yeah.
generally speaking, I'm not fond of them. Art is subjective, after all. Different qualities of different works will resonate with different people.
Very true. Like how I kind of liked the live action Death Note movie on Netflix, and I enjoy Sword Art Online.
And just because a show doesn't hit you the same way it did that guy you heard shouting its title from the rooftops, or the hundreds of thousands of people you've seen discussing it online, that doesn't necessarily mean those people are wrong to like it as much as they do, or that it doesn't deserve the love it gets. Even with SAO, my most hatedest anime, actually that's probably Rent a Girlfriend at this point, and that is the rare case where I do think a lot of the remaining fans legitimately have something close to Stockholm syndrome. But
no.
anyway, even with SAO,
Oh no.
while I stand by many of my criticisms of the story structure, characters,
That's so
tonal
funny that I
dissonance in
mentioned
that
Sword Art
series,
Online, never
I
mind.
can understand how all the things it does well in terms of action, music, sound design, and selling the fantasy of saving the world by being good at video games
Hell yeah.
hide or override those flaws for a viewer looking for a specific kind of good time. I really think the world would be a much better place if all of us, myself included, were more willing to say, it's just not for me, and accept that.
Ooh, that would be one, wouldn't it? It's just not for me. Not it's mid, or it's overhyped, or it's underhyped. It's just not for me. I like that phrase. Oh,
A large group of people disagreeing and or a group of any size disagreeing very strongly doesn't mean there's anything wrong with them or us. But at the same time, I do understand
there's a
why
but.
the overhyped label gets thrown around so much.
Oh god, there was so much hype behind Chainsaw Man. It was unreal. It was never gonna live up to how much hype there was. Like, it wasn't overhyped, but like, it was very very hyped up. And yeah.
For, as I see it, two big reasons. First, because there are far more anime that I, and I think most anime fans, would unreservedly call underhyped than overhyped, especially in our modern,
Odd Taxi's
oversaturated
so good.
algorithmic attention economy. From Baby Steps to Rakugo Shinju, Recreators to Planet With,
Oh,
Odd
Planet
Taxi
With.
to Bocchi the Rock, I've spent my whole career being that guy up on the rooftop, screaming and begging for people to please just watch a little less shonen and isekai and
Yeah,
ecchi
yeah.
and just a little more
Branch
hail.
out a little bit.
And I've only occasionally been met with success there. I mean, I suppose in the grand scheme of things, nearly 200,000 views on a 40-minute analysis of irresponsible Captain Tyler in the year 2020 is what annoying kids circa 2006 would have dubbed a great success. It's me. I'm annoying kids circa 2006.
Yeah.
I just think Tyler deserves like a cajillion views, you know? And I'm sure that there's an anime that you feel the same way about. At the end of the day, though, there's only so much time in the day, and far more anime that's genuinely worth that time in some way for any of us to ever get to anywhere near all of it.
Like, you should all give Escaflowne another go. I know it's been years since it came out, but that anime still stands. Like, I watched it all the way through, like, a year and a bit ago. Still pretty strong freaking anime. Escaflowne. Go watch it.
Or for the anime industry to actually
Ow,
make all
my
of it,
foot.
for that matter, but all the recent cancellations are a topic for another day.
Near all
And
songs,
certainly the frustration of seeing your personal underhyped fave get passed over for the 100,000th time by someone making a beeline for Demon Slayer, Attack on Titan, most recently Chainsaw Man, can easily breed resentment toward those series and even their fans, but it's not the anime's fault for hitting on something that resonates with a lot of people, or those people's fault for being resonated with and wanting to share that feeling. That's just the nature of art and human beings. So
I can't wait for
calling
Attack on
those
Titan to
things
come back.
overhyped just comes off as an unfair and by and large unhelpful criticism. That said, it can be a very helpful warning to potential viewers because, here's that second reason, and the main reason I made this video, when too much hype surrounds an anime, or anything really, the hype itself can have a huge negative impact on our experience of that thing.
Yeah, this is so true. If someone tells you something's amazing and then you're watching it and you think it's okay, you're going to be put off whilst watching it.
By skewing our expectations
Yes,
for it.
exactly.
A phenomenon I like to call hype poisoning.
Hype poisoning.
Many a tourist
Nice.
has gone to the Louvre seeking out Leonard da Vinci's most famous
Da
and
Vinci.
acclaimed portrait and waded through a sea of bodies
Just to be
see
like,
it up close,
is that it?
only to walk away thinking, that's it?
It's like, what was it? The Lonely Island for their movie they did. It's, Mona Lisa, you're a regular basic bitch with your terrible smile and it's like, yeah, cool.
It's so small. Plus,
You're
her
ugly.
smile was merely bemusing, not beguiling. I want my money back. And no explanation of the incredible technique that went into it, or the subtle brilliance of its composition, or the fascinating history that's added to the painting's cultural significance over the centuries, is gonna undo that bad first impression. Any serious art scholar will tell you that the Mona Lisa is a great painting, well deserving of praise and study, but it's not the greatest painting ever painted, like a casual art enjoyer might quite reasonably expect it to be from the sheer amount of times they've heard the name dropped. The reputation that precedes it is nothing short of legendary, and like a lot of legends, the reality just can't live up to what a lot of people picture in their heads. And when you've gone out of your way, in some cases half a globe out of your way to see it, the resulting disappointment can easily turn to resentment or even outright hatred. And of course, anime can suffer from this problem every bit as much as lesser art forms. Part of what inspired me to make this video was a comment on my second channel from The Panda, who asked me to make a Jeff rant about how, quote, with paraphrasing, the anime community should stop overhyping legendary shows like Trigun and Cowboy Bebop because it sets new anime viewers up for failure.
Oh, okay.
The Panda has talked to quite a few people who hate Cowboy Bebop because it was hyped up as the greatest thing ever versus a more realistic take on what it actually is. It's an objectively good, even great show, but if you hype it up, the viewer expects to have their mind
be the
blown.
best,
To be clear, I won't just be focusing on those classics, because this is also a problem we see with modern hyped-up legends like Chainsaw Man, for example, which, despite being beautifully produced and generally well-received, has also picked up its fair share of haters. But we'll get to that in a bit. If there's one thing I've learned from my time in this job, it's that telling people, especially anime fans, to stop doing pretty much anything is the fastest way to make them do it harder and more obnoxiously. But even if I could immediately halt all the hype trains everywhere, I don't think I would, because hyping things up is fun. Especially when those things are Cowboy Bebop, which only blows my mind more with the quality and consistency of its production the more I watch other TV anime and learn what goes into them. Not to mention with its deft, versatile character writing and visionary world building, oh god, it's me. I'm obnoxious anime fans. Seriously, though,
Jeff, no!
Cowboy Bebop changed the way that I personally look at all art forever, and while I recognize it definitely won't do that for anywhere near everyone who watches it, I refuse to hold back on gushing about my personal experience with it in hopes of reaching more of the people for whom it will. Sure, it makes me sad to think of someone watching Cowboy Bebop
and not enjoying it,
expectations set so high they walk away hating it, but it makes me even sadder to think of a world where nobody talks about or watches it at all, and without the unbridled, maybe exaggerated enthusiasm that, as Panda put it, OG North American anime fans have toward the classics, the word-of-mouth marketing us fans provide. that's exactly where Bebop would be. Buried next to the equally objectively great, irresponsible Captain Tyler beneath an ever-growing mountain of the newest and shiniest pop culture stuff. Hype and praise are what
But
keep
what about
works of
Gundam
art
Wing?
alive past their increasingly short sell-by dates, giving new audiences a reason to go back and join the conversation
What
around
about
them,
Big
even
O?
if their only contribution ends up being, boy, that sucked. I have no idea what you're all going on
What about
about. Hype can
Metabots?
even help works that flopped on their initial release receive the recognition and success they deserve years after the fact. Like how the enduring love
Scott
for the
Pilgrim.
Scott Pilgrim
Wow.
movie eventually resulted in revival screenings, a re-release of the video game, and reportedly an upcoming Netflix anime adaptation.
What?
Now, obviously, speaking of Netflix
Cool.
and Cowboy Bebop, the
Yeah.
end results of those revival efforts aren't always, great.
Good.
And sometimes, even when they are, the aforementioned hype for the original can be so immense that it totally overshadows what's great about them. Like what's happening now to
I'm loving
Trigun
Stampede.
where thousands upon thousands of
But yeah, with me, I'm loving Stampede, but I've never seen the original Trigun, so I'm not like all these other OG anime fans that were like going into this like, no, I'm really enjoying Stampede. I think the story's great, the animation's great, and it's very intriguing.
I'm just gonna say it. Tasteless, nostalgia-blinded dummies are review bombing and trash talking it on MAL and
Stop
elsewhere
it.
without really
Stop
giving
it.
it a chance because they've convinced themselves that bleeding
It's
edge
so good.
CGI from literally the best studio in
Orange.
that business is uglier than a show that looked
Beastars,
like this
man.
most of the time, and that cutting down on the repetitive first act so Wolfwood can show up sooner is a bad thing? Which has a double
okay, so he
whammy
shows up
effect
later
of
in the original. Cool.
discouraging people from checking out the very cool and beautiful new show, and setting many of them up for, as Panda would put it, failure if and when they go back to check out the good but undeniably flawed first anime. And that's not even getting into how the people doing the hyping are poisoning themselves against something
I'll watch
they
the
might
original after I've
otherwise
watched
love out of a
Stampede.
misguided belief that its success would somehow take away from the other similar but not quite similar enough thing they already love. So clearly this is a problem worth addressing, but the question is, how do we mitigate the negative effects of hype poisoning without denying the oldies and goodies and new hidden gems the hype that makes them relevant, or pointlessly scolding people for getting too excited about the next big thing? One thing I find helps massively whenever I recommend something I'm hyped for is to be as specific as I am effusive in my praise. Because at the end of the day, it's exactly as helpful and fair to characterize Cowboy Bebop as the greatest thing ever as it is to call it overhyped. That is to say, not at all. Not only does it feed into the toxic, self-defeating mentality that art is some kind of competition, simply telling someone that an anime is the Bebop's knees doesn't really do anything to help
Bebop's
them
knees,
figure out if
love that.
they'll like it or not. It only makes it more likely that they'll build up an image in their head that the real thing can't possibly match. But when you talk about how, say, the detailed mechanical designs of Cowboy Bebop's ship interiors help make the sci-fi setting feel
It looks
tangible
so
to live
freaking
in,
good.
or how it paints an uncommon picture of everyday life in the future that stands in stark contrast to your typical sweeping space opera, or how the blend of animation and music in basically every episode is nothing short of hypnotic, suddenly they've got specific things to look forward to and look out for when they do watch it. And they've got specific points of reference that they can compare other anime or shows or movies that they already like to better judge if they'll enjoy it ahead of time. It's also vital, both as someone giving a recommendation and as someone receiving it, to be aware that no work of art is perfect. Some
Yes.
things, like Who Framed Roger
Wow,
Rabbit,
what a
are as
film.
close to perfect as they possibly could have been, given the circumstances surrounding their creation.
Yeah.
That's what I personally mean when I call something peak fiction, a descriptor I'd also ascribe to Cowboy Bebop. But that's as good as any piece of art will ever get. Everything man-made has flaws, and some kinds of flaws will bother some people more than others, just as some artistic strengths hold a lot more value for some of us than others. And while it can feel wrong to bring such things up when trying to sell someone on your favorite anime, acknowledging them up front gives people a more realistic view of what they're giving into and ultimately makes it more likely that they'll embrace the bad with the good, or get to the good stuff in the first place. Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood is another one of those works that I'd argue is as good as it possibly could have been.
It's so up there. My God, Brotherhood is so good.
Given the time it was made and the time Bones had to make it. It's beautifully animated and directed with stunning music and some of the best vocal performances in any anime, no matter
Even the
what
dub's
language you choose
good.
to watch it in. And when you look at the story in its totality, the tight, intricate construction of its plot is nothing short of awe-inspiring. But it also gets off to a relatively rough start as it rushes through the parts of the story that FMA 2003 already adapted, which diminishes the impact of some of FMA's most hyped moments, like the little girl playing with her dog or the terrible day for rain. I've personally watched people bounce off the series because those early episodes just didn't live up to their expectations. So I'm careful to note with any new potential fan that while it is pretty darn good from the start, Brotherhood only starts getting truly great around, I'd say, episode 12. I make similar qualifications for Avatar: The Last Airbender.
I've not seen the original Full Metal Alchemist,
Spends
so.
a few episodes finding the right balance between Nickelodeon-style cartoon comedy and anime-style serious storytelling before really hitting its stride around the Winter Solstice two-parter at episode 7. Of course, that approach assumes that a potential new fan is actively seeking out a specific recommendation, not picking up on the broad idea that certain anime are good or worth watching through cultural osmosis and the mere exposure effect. An issue that generally affects the new hype even more than the old, but
It's like Chorus
also one
Recoil.
that we can't really do a lot about so long as people, enjoy talking about things they like. Besides maybe promoting the idea that media literacy is cool and fun to the anime community at large, but shipping and power scaling are generally considered to be way more fun, so that's probably a dead end. What we can do for ourselves, though, is learn to parse the hype and mitigate our own expectations, so, at the very least, we don't end up feeling bitter and disappointed because a show that was merely
My
pretty
dress up
darn
darling.
good.
Oh, my dress up darling. Now that's something about, like, that's a show I would never normally kind of watch, but loved it. Oh my God. I need to. I'll calm down. I'll calm down.
Didn't change our lives and save anime forever like we were hoping. And I think the best, or at least most algorithmically beneficial at this particular point in time, way to do that is by looking at the response to Chainsaw Man,
Yeah.
which, again, was almost entirely positive. It's a very popular anime, and highly rated. Not the highest rated, but Bleach fans are having their moment right now.
They are
and
right
when
now,
that's
aren't they?
done, FMA Brotherhood fans will continue clinging to their moment by endlessly review bombing anything that challenges their fave's top spot. And, oh look, the Bleach fans stopped having their moment as I was
no.
writing this. A fair number of people did
Oh,
go into
okay.
Chainsaw Man expecting the greatest anime of all time, though, based on the buzz around the source material and
Which is so
excitement
good.
for the lavishly produced trailers, and found it wanting because of that. Something I'll freely admit that I personally contributed to by singing the manga's praises ahead of the anime's release, and will not apologize for because that manga also
It is
changed the
incredible.
way I look at art forever, and I stand by my assessment that it is, in fact, peak fiction. But I wouldn't quite say the same for the anime. It's pretty darn great, a hell of an animation showcase with a lot of fun stylistic flourishes, especially in the EDs, that was clearly made by a team with a ton of love for both the original manga and the many movies that inspired it.
Yes.
And I was especially impressed with the amount of gruesome detail those animators managed to preserve from the original without sacrificing the fluidity of their animation. But a lot of the manga's cool concepts, like the Eternity Devil and its infinitely looping tower hotel, are just inherently more at home trapped in time on a static vertical
Yeah, I
page
did
than they
enjoy the
are
manga
moving through
more
a
for
more
that.
temporal art form. And while the overtly cinematic style of the anime fits well with Fujimoto's overall aesthetic sensibilities and the horrific tone of his story, it also necessitates slowing that incredibly dense story down to achieve the same feeling of creeping tension that you get closely examining his art. Meaning we could only get as far as the end of the now shit's getting real arc in the 12 episodes Mappa had time to make look that good. Which leaves it feeling a touch anticlimactic. And that's fine. I know it's not the climax, just the first
Yeah,
act of
oh
a
my
much better
god, I
story that
can't
I
wait
am
for the rest.
eagerly awaiting to see
Hell yes.
continued. But then I've already read the manga. As a fan, I'm quite happy with it, but I can totally see how an excited new viewer waiting through those first 12 episodes might walk away thinking, that's it? Where's the mind-shattering kaboom? Or,
It's
for
later.
that matter,
It's
how a
later.
pickier
Oh my
fan might
God.
be put off or incensed even by all the small changes they had to make to that story, especially given how the disparity between anime viewership and manga readership in the English fandom specifically meant that for a lot of those fans, this was their chance to finally share a thing they loved to pieces with their friends and family, only to be met with, that's it? Or possibly, yeah, that was pretty good, but I think I like Spy Family more.
No,
I mean, it could
I
be
mean,
a lot worse.
I've only
You
watched one
could
episode,
be
but
Lucifer and the Biscuit Hammer fans, but still, I feel the frustration, and it's easy to see how that can be turned on and amplified against the anime itself. But for both camps, the new viewers and the hardcore originalists, the antidote to that frustration is the same. You've just got to accept that adaptations will never, ever, ever be exactly like the thing they're adapting. And if they were, they'd suck because different things work differently in different mediums.
and that's why I like. I can't believe it. Bringing this back from the beginning of my intro. That's why I liked the live-action Death Note film on Netflix.
And that, in turn, inevitably means that some stories which are great in one medium won't be as great in other ones. One Piece and Bleach spring to mind. They were some of my go-to examples of overhyped anime back when I used the term, right up until I read them and finally got it. In the same way that you'll never be able to appreciate any anime story without some degree of localization until you're fluent in Japanese, you'll never be able to appreciate how great any manga's story really is until
true.
you've actually read it. Even if the anime version is great or even greater in its own right, which it won't be like 99% of the time, and that's okay because again, like localized foreign content, when you watch the anime version of something, you're trading fidelity for accessibility and convenience. That pill also becomes easier to swallow the more you learn about what goes into making anime. The crazy tight schedules it's produced under, the amount of moving parts in any given production pipeline that can all potentially break and throw the whole thing off, and the fact that the industry is making way more than it can actually handle, and more with each passing year,
There is
to
so
satiate the global
much
streaming market's
anime.
insatiable desire for more content. But again, topic for another day. But of course, learning about all that stuff takes time that you probably don't have on account of your own hell job, which statistically you're probably watching anime just to not think about for a bit. Or maybe it's a hell school. So I can't really blame anyone for not cutting your average anime as much slack as I do when it proves to not be as worth their precious time as they were led to believe. Possibly by me or another critic. Because here's another important thing to keep in perspective when considering the hype around an artwork. The perspectives of critics are inevitably skewed by the nature of our work. The amount of different and obscure media that we expose ourselves to and the research we do into what goes into the things we love inevitably colors how we view them. I have always loved Cowboy Bebop.
He just showed so many decent anime that I've loved this year. He had Dynazenon. He had what was the one with Gaelish Joe in? But the boxing one, and then Vivi Fluorite, the time traveling singing robot. Wow.
But like I said at the top, I love it immensely more knowing just how much of a miracle it really was in the context of 90s TV anime production, and having watched literally hundreds of shows to which I can now compare the strengths, weaknesses, and novel elements of its writing, direction, and animation. By the same token, as someone who's had lots of time to read lots of comics and manga, the innovative, ingenious experimentation in Chainsaw Man's paneling and page layouts stands out to me, whereas a casual manga enjoyer is probably just gonna think it looks real cool. I, like pretty much any serious critic, am inherently biased toward over-appreciating stuff with lots of minute technical details that I can spend hours thinking about, or genuinely new ideas and imagery that expand my perspective on art, and to underappreciating the simple, accessible, familiar, fun things that so many people enjoy. So what grabs me about a given work isn't necessarily going to grab most of you, and that goes both ways. And, of course, there's a whole spectrum of media interest and taste levels between casual fan and professional critic that leads to a lot of more hardcore anime viewers feeling a similar disconnect between what they love and what broadly appeals to the biggest audiences. Sometimes we get lucky and those factors converge, like they mostly did with Chainsaw Man, especially the manga, but most times they really don't. Therefore, one of the most important things that any of us can do to manage our expectations for anything we've heard is cool is remember we heard it from someone who's not us, and thus almost certainly cares about different things from us, or possibly the same things but to different degrees. So it will hit you different than it hit them, even if it hits just as hard. And even if you find someone whose recommendations always seem to hit for you, at least one will eventually inevitably miss if you give it enough time, because no work of art is for everyone. That's just the nature of art and human beings. And with that in mind, I think the most important thing we can do to inoculate ourselves against hype poisoning and disappointment is to simply be aware that the greatest anime ever does not and cannot exist. Art isn't a competition. It's a conversation that we've been having as a species since we first smeared antelope-shaped mud on a rock. And as soon as the second smear was down, there were folks who liked the first one more and vice versa. But both of them, and every smear since, offer a glimpse into how the people who smeared them see the world. And whether or not we personally enjoy how they look, that is where their real value lies. I'm Jeff Thu, professional hype microdoser, reminding you to hype responsibly.
Hype responsibly. That was good. That was really good. Maybe it's just not for me. Everyone is entitled to their own opinion, but yes, if you overhype something, it can ruin someone's experience for things. And yeah, a lot of interesting discussion points in that. That was a cool video. Cool. Anyway, thank you to my patrons. If you want to have your name at the end of every video I upload, link in the description to the Patreon page. $1 or more last channel. It's greatly appreciated. Thank you guys so much for that, and thank you all for watching. What do you guys think of that? What do you guys think of this? Click like, subscribe already. Leave comments down below. Let me know that I shall watch this in future videos. I'll see you guys all next time.